Hello, everybody. Welcome back into Sports and Money. I am Ben Parker. You may also recognize this show as Pro Football Plus. We're also affiliated with the Box Score Network. Be that as it may. Welcome aboard tonight. We're talking about the Raiders. We're talking about Geno Smith. And the real thing I want to get across once we kind of get over the Geno Smith excitement and what that sets the table for is some of the options now. Let's explore some of the options for the Raiders and just kind of see what else might happen, okay, and what directions we might take here as we're working our way through this offseason here for the Raiders. Glad to have you on board. So, of course, you know by now, if you're watching this video, Geno Smith has been traded from the Seahawks to the Raiders. Why for the Raiders is really obvious, right? I'll explore that a little bit more here in a second, but the Pete Carroll connection is obvious. The Raiders needed a quarterback really bad, is obvious. The Raiders are kind of in win now, compete now mode, really obvious. Not necessarily the best landing spot for a rookie quarterback, although, I'm sure they explored it. I'm sure they thought about it. But did they actually have the best landing spot for rookie quarterback? Not necessarily. But then, too, this year's group of rookie quarterbacks, if you believe in them, and I do to an extent, still, you figure, hey, it's a year to 2 years before they're developed and up and running, and it doesn't really feel like the Raiders and Pete Carroll are in a boat to be doing that, right? So for any number of reasons, bringing Geno Smith in, it seems to make a lot of sense here for the Raiders. I'll dive in even more into that in just a second. Why would Seattle let him go though? All right, I mean a third round pick, man. I mean, really, that's nothing. I get it. I know how old Geno Smith is. I know how much he costs. But listen, just last week on the John Schneider show, you can check it out on Apple Podcasts over there and the other podcast group, Spotify. You can check it out. John Schneider said last week, almost word for word, Geno's our guy. We love him. We're ready to sign an extension. We're ready to move forward with him, is what John said. And a week later, he gets traded. So clearly, listen, for a third round pick, I mean, that's really just not much for a starting level NFL quarterback. And I know some people have Geno as a top 10 ish quarterback, and other people have him 17th or 18th, and that's fine. Wherever you got him, you view him, that's totally fine. But no matter what, he's a starting level quarterback. He produces. Third round pick really just is next to nothing here for a starting level quarterback. So obviously, Seattle was ready to move on. And this is not, listen, no matter what you hear out there, don't let somebody feed you the line. This is just something Seattle came to last week when they heard Geno's number. That's not what's happening here. Okay, this would have been a decision that would have been made probably back in January or early February, whenever Seattle's season was over and Schneider and McDonald had a chance to sit down with all of their people. This was probably a decision that was made weeks ago in order that they probably planned to let Geno go. And more than likely, listen, you can't just wait to the last second to make big decisions like this. More than likely, they talked about this behind closed doors in the 24 off season and said, hey, obviously we're moving ahead with Geno right now, heading into the 24 year. And if he looks good and we look good, we'll explore deeper opportunities. But they missed the playoffs, right? So, not being a part of that and kind of not having the greatest stretch run, when you do that, I think they had already kind of had in the back of their minds that if they didn't have a great season, solid season, but not great season, if they didn't have a great season, this was probably the road they were going to go down. And no matter what, they had already made this decision weeks ago. They did not just come up with this on the last second upon hearing whatever number it was that Geno Smith and his agents came up with. So anyway, that's all fine. Seattle's ready to move on. Raiders pick him up. I really like it here for the Raiders. So let me do a little bit of screen sharing here. Give me 1 second, and we'll start to actually talk a little bit more stuff here on Geno and the Raiders, and we'll get that second. Pete Carroll coming on as head coach here. You knew things were going to shake up when Carroll got into the house, and Tom Brady and Spytech and everybody else. Okay, here's what I want to see. This is Pro Football Reference, their website, tremendous website. Most of you, I'm sure, are very well familiar with the statistics they put out. They do a tremendous job. But bringing in Geno Smith, what does it do? Well, he's not an elite guy, okay? It's not Lamar, right? It's not Patrick, and it's not Josh Allen. But he really just does set a great table for you, you hope, over the next 2 to 3 years. And that kind of really is the time frame right now. Since you brought in Pete Carroll, You're really looking at the next 2 to 3 years, which is compete next year right away. How quickly can we just compete? And then, how long can that window stay open? So bringing Geno Smith in, you're looking at the next 2 to 3 seasons. What can we do? And you look right here at his statistics. This is his yards throwing right here. The last 3 years, over 4,000 in that tremendous 22 season, probably his best season ever. 3,623, and then hit the 4,300 yard mark again last year, which is all tremendous. That's production level, competitive level numbers right there coming out of Geno Smith. Really love to see that resurgence late in his career. The touchdown to interception ratio is nothing to write home about. He had a good one in 22, again, probably his best year. It was 30 TDs, 11 picks. 23, he had 20-9 TD to interception ratio. Not great in the last year, 21-15. So again, starting to see it back off a little bit. Excuse me, throat's getting dry. Over here, the yards per attempt, which is always a number that I enjoy looking up, or yards. Where is it at? Yeah, yards per attempt right here. It's holding pretty steady. So you're at 7.4, 7.5, 7.3, 7.5. Okay, so that number's holding up pretty steady. People will bring up completion percentage. That's just not completion percentage is not really a number that you can hold much stock in these days. It is so different with the way these guys throw the football to the running backs and screens and stuff. I don't count that much, but the other numbers are all pretty solid. Again, it sets a foundation for you here if you're the Raiders. It gives you some solidarity. It gives you some strength, some stability, and you haven't had as much of that as you've wanted to, not just at that position, because you had Carr for several years, but just on the franchise as a whole. So bringing Geno Smith in and the obvious link there with Pete Carroll. The other thing it really does is it makes everybody on your football team feel good. One of the first things we saw after the trade was Max Crosby tweeting out LFG, right? Let's go. He's excited. And he should be. He's got a chance to compete now. There's nothing worse in sports other than not being able to play. That's the worst feeling. But there's nothing worse in sports than heading out there every week, no matter what level, what sport, and thinking we don't really have a chance. Yeah, we're going to go out and work hard. We're going to compete. I'm going to fight my tail off, but I don't really have a chance here. When you are out here competing, you want to at least know that you have a chance, and Geno Smith gives you that. Every single week, you have a chance. Some weeks you'll have an advantage at quarterback. Other weeks you won't. But every week now with Geno at quarterback, he's got the good arm strength. He's got the good production numbers. He gives you a chance here. So really, really like the Raiders doing this. Again, I wouldn't have minded if they had drafted a guy, but with Pete Carroll kind of coming in here, you figure they're just not wanting to take that long to do that. And not the greatest roster here to support a young quarterback at this point anyway. Certainly feel like Geno Smith would handle things a lot better. Okay, so that's it on the Geno Smith side of things. So we can say more, we can spend more time on it, but what I really wanted to get into tonight, hey, now that we've got a quarterback, now that we've got a coach, now that we got Max Crosby happy, he's got his money and well worth it. Listen, I'm not up for paying everybody, but paying Crosby as an elite guy, still just at the prime of his career, probably should have 2 to 3 more prime years here. So Crosby's happy. And you already brought in Alex Kappa, I think, from the Cincinnati Bengals, just to kind of solidify what was already a pretty good offensive line here by today's standards. So you got all this settled. What else now? What else can we start to do here? So there's a lot of things. We're going to do a 3-round mock draft at the end of this show here in a few minutes. But what else can we start to look at here? And one of the first things you start to look at as well, the Raiders free agents. And I'm not pulling up the Raiders free agents necessarily. This is some other free agents in the secondary that we did on a different show, but I'll get to that in a second. Raiders free agents, who the Raiders still have that they need to pull back in. Who are some major guys, right? Well, one of the ones I really would love to see the Raiders bring back is Trevon Merrick right here. 26 years old at the start of the season when the season starts. He's a safety. You Raiders fans know him very well. Probably can get him for a 2 to 4 year deal, maybe at 3 years. We'll see. Wouldn't be super expensive, probably $12 to $16 million, give or take, depending on who else is interested. But you could probably, if you move sooner rather than later. And by the way, if you see this video 4 days from now, things are going to move quick, right? Not only for the Raiders, but for the entire NFL. But you could probably get him on a reasonable deal and keep that secondary somewhat intact. And it's not a great secondary. I'm going to recommend some major upgrades here in a few minutes. But to me, Trevon Moehrig is a guy that's great down in the box, pretty good at that safety spot. So I would love to bring him back. Really think he can play even better, especially under Pete Carroll here. So I think for not too much money, they could bring him back and keep him at a young age, 26 years old, man. That's good for free agent. You don't find too many outstanding free agents. There's a few here. You don't find too many that 26-year-old age bracket, which is what he'll be at the start of the season. So I would be all in favor of bringing him back. How much cap space the Raiders have? It's not 95 anymore. By the time they did the Kappa deal, the Geno Smith deal, and the I've already lost his name, Max Crosby deal. By the time they did that, they're somewhere around $40 to $43 million, give or take, and it might even drop a little bit more by the time they give an extension to Geno Smith. So you might even be under 40 by that point. But that's fine. There's still plenty of room to work. And listen, I figure if you're the Raiders, because you got Spytek over from Buccaneers, and Brady kind of saw how the Buccaneers work. The Buccaneers get kind of free with their cap space. They don't mind doing kind of what the Eagles and the Saints do, and that is getting kind of hinky with it, okay? They don't mind. And I figure the Raiders are going to do some of the same, all right? So don't necessarily think, well, the Raiders only have 40. They might go into the 60 well. Since they've got a shorter window, they wouldn't mind kind of pushing some dead cap space off into, say, the 2028 or 29 seasons in order to capture this window here. So just don't be surprised. But right now, they're sitting somewhere around $40 million of cap space, give or take a little bit. So if you were to take off the Moehrig contract, that would drop them maybe down to under 30, 25 to 30. Nate Hobbs is a guy that I think you could bring back, and I would like to. Again, he's 26 years old. I think you could probably bring him back, probably on a 2 to 3 year deal, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably $5-6 million a season. It might get a little bit higher than that, again, depending on what Hobbs and his agent are wanting to try to do. So the Raiders may even allow him to test free agency and then bring back offers back to them and see. But we'll see. I would love to have Hobbs in the slot. But Hobbs is, to me, if Hobbs goes, I'm not going to have my feelings hurt about it. If you're a Raiders fan, you're watching, let me know how you feel about it. That's somebody that I could let go, not going to absolutely kill me. Malcolm Kuntz at defensive end, I would love to bring him back. Again, I don't think that's an outrageous contract, but I liked what I saw when he was healthy, so I would love to bring him back. Robert Spillane at linebacker, I would really like to bring him back. I love the attitude there, love the tackling. I don't necessarily think Spillane is just a drop-dead, elite level linebacker by any stretch, but I would love to, for the money it's going to cost, I would love to bring Spillane back as well. And then I think Adam Butler's the only other guy. Adam Butler, if he can be brought back for cheap at defensive tackle, that's fine. But I'm not gonna be real excited as having Adam Butler as my main starter again on the defensive line this year. I know he offers some things, and he played a bunch of snaps last year. I'm not real excited necessarily about having him play another 900, 1,000 snaps this year. I would much more, if we can bring back on the cheap, that's fine. Maybe let's work him in 500-600 snaps, something like that. More of the rotation level basis there for Adam Butler is how I'm feeling on him. So anyway, those are kind of the lead free agents there for the Raiders that they could bring back. If you do all of that, you probably still probably going to have $10-15 million over the cap, or under the cap. I haven't done all the math on that, but probably still a good $10 million. So, what does that let you do in free agency? You need to do something. When I look at the Raiders' needs, real quick before we get into the mock, running back's an obvious one. I'd rather address that in the draft. Wide receiver, you need more people to throw the football to than Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. And then anywhere on the defense, man, I don't care. Secondary, cornerback, linebacker, and defensive line. Boy, take your pick. You could address all of these needs. To me, when I've looked at this free agent box this year, the best opportunities for upgrades are in the secondary. All right. Now, not all of these players are going to make it to free agency. Some of them, their teams are going to snap them up over the next 2 or 3 days. But some of them are going to get through. And I think that's where the Raiders, if they wanted to, could get at least one guy. I don't necessarily think they want to invest in a bunch of these guys, but at least one guy here to kind of come in and upgrade the secondary. And the three or four that I'm most interested in, Byron Murphy, if the Vikings let him go, and I haven't heard anything one way or the other on that yet. If the Vikings will let him go, he's a pretty good cover guy, boundary corner, 27 years old when the season comes to a start in 2025. You can get him somewhere. Listen. I don't know exactly. It depends on how many teams get the bidding on him, his services. But 18 million, $20 million, somewhere in there. Probably a 3 or 4 year deal. I wouldn't think of five, but probably a 4 year deal you'd catch him on. That would be a welcome addition to a Raiders secondary that I think could really use some juice. To me, it's the secondary and the wide receiving core. I mean, obviously the running backs, but if you're talking about one of the major groups, it's wide receivers and it's secondary guys and it's cover guys. Okay, so I would love to see them look at Byron Murphy if he gets on the market. DJ Reed, same thing, man. We can have a long conversation about just exactly how good DJ Reed is, but he's going to be a whole lot better than anything you've got on the Raiders side right now, and a whole lot better than what might be out there. So the Raiders, DJ Reed at 28 years old, he'd probably be a little bit cheaper, quite honestly, but not a lot. So you can bring in DJ Reed. There's some other guys here, but between age and actual talent performance level, I'm not as thrilled with this group here. It's really Byron Murphy and DJ Reed. If I were the Raiders, that I would be interested in adding in here to my secondary. One of them, not both of them, wouldn't kill me cap wise. And then you drop down here. Mike Hilton's interesting, but if you bring back Hobbs, I don't necessarily know that you need Hilton, who's 5 years older. Hilton's a whole heck of a lot better, but Hilton's 5 years older. Going to have to question just how long he could play. So I would love bringing Hilton in if it happened. But the other one here is Javon Holland. I kind of keep hearing, and again, you never know how good these sources are because people lie, right? They only tell you the truth when it's to their benefit to do so, and they lie when it's their benefit to do so, man. Okay, so but I keep hearing that Javon Holland and the Dolphins may just not happen, and that Holland may actually get to test free agency, and if he does, why wouldn't the Raiders take a look at him? It would be something to think about. Certainly, we'll see what direction they go. But anyway, that's kind of what we're looking at here. There's some other safeties available, but they do not excite me to the same level. If you're already going to re-sign Merrick anyway, which I'm recommending and I'm half expecting here that the Raiders will do. Okay, so that's not only what the Raiders free agents still left to be signed are, but that's a quick look at what the Raiders kind of moving. It's changing every day. Moving cap totals look like and what I think they might do in free agency. Could you go out and get a veteran wide receiver? Absolutely. For probably 16, 17, $18 million, you could probably pull off the Cooper Kupp trade if you wanted to. Maybe go after an Amari Cooper, maybe go after a Stephon Diggs, and that's fine. That would help your depth, but those aren't needle movers. I got to say, those are not needle movers. We watched all of those guys on other teams last year, and they weren't needle movers for the other teams. Okay, so those are if you're going to sign a guy like that, like an Amari Cooper, a Stephon Diggs, a Cooper Kupp in a trade, whoever the other name was, I mentioned Hopkins, I guess. If you're going to sign a guy like that, it's only because you're so depleted at wide receiver, and that's fine. If the Raiders do that, but I wouldn't want to sign too many old guys here for the Raiders. We've seen them do that before over the past season. So I wouldn't want to get too caught up in just signing a bunch of veteran guys who are going to be old in 2 years. I would kind of steer clear of that. But that's one reason I do like Byron Murphy here from the Vikings and DJ Reed. They're 27, 28. You would like to think they got another 3 or 4 really good years in them before you see a drop off. And Javon Holland, if Holland makes it away from the Dolphins, dude's 25 at the start of next season. Okay, I mean, one of the youngest guys out here in free agency. So those are the guys that interest me because not only am I boosting a major hole on my team, a position group that's really out of deficit, right? But I'm bringing in younger guys. I don't want to bring in a bunch of old guys just to compete overnight. Geno Smith at quarterback 34 is old enough. I really would like to kind of start now keeping the younger guys fresh in here, and I expect that the Raiders will do that. Okay, that again is just exploring options. I'm not trying to to nail everything down here, and the Raiders may even go down a totally different path, and that's fine if they do. So let's do a little bit of mock simulation here tonight. Love doing mock drafts. They're a lot of fun. Again, just exploring what all's out there, giving you a look and see what might be there. There are many different mock simulators that I like. I love PFF. I love the mock draft database. Tonight, I'm going to use Pro Football Network. Okay, so give us just a second to load this up. Let me find where the Raiders are. I know you already see it. There it is. And then 7 rounds. We ain't gonna do 7 rounds, but I'll lock that in just to have access to all of the draft picks, and then we put it on fast. Okay, so give it just a second here. We'll get the Raiders pick up. We are going to assume, for tonight's purposes, we're going to assume that the Raiders do bring back Trevon Merrick at safety, so that kind of fills in one safety spot. Malcolm Kuntz, and again, I know they've got another guy at safety there. I still think an upgrade in safety is needed. Malcolm Kuntz at defensive end, Spillane at linebacker. Not going to bring Butler back unless it's on the cheap. And let's bring back Hobbs too. So your cap space is starting to get a little limited. But what that does, it kind of keeps you from having to draft in certain spots, and it keeps you open to drafting almost anything that comes up. If I'm drafting the way I want to in this draft, and again, things almost never work out the way you want, right? You have to have plans A through Z. I would love to get a running back in this draft, maybe 2. You can do that in this draft. This draft is loaded with running backs. I'm hearing people, and I haven't studied this deep, but I have studied the first, cluster of running backs. But I'm hearing people say there are 30, as many as 30 running backs in this draft with draftable grades. Now, again, I haven't studied all 30 per se as far as breaking down the tape, but you can do that in this draft. You can get running backs, and that'll help the Raiders. Somebody to throw the football to. It is not the greatest draft to be getting wide receivers, but there are still guys available. All right, there are guys in the first round, second round, and third round. When you get to the second and third rounds, the talent drops off a good bit, but there is size or speed. You can kind of take your pick. We want either a big guy or we want a fast guy. You can get that. So in this draft, if the Raiders, let's assume the Raiders go ahead and sign a veteran wide receiver somehow, whether that's a Cooper Kupp trade or whether that is, an Amari Cooper or whatever, anything in that bracket. But you want to pair another young guy with him to go along with Brock Bowers. You can do that in this draft. That's available. It will upgrade what you're doing in theory right here for the Raiders. And then the other thing is I desperately feel like we need to upgrade this secondary. The secondary needs more juice. So even if we bring back Hobbs and even if we bring back Merrick, I really feel like this secondary needs a lot of juice. You can do that in this draft. All right. It's all available. Okay. So let's get on with it here. This is Pro Football Network's mock draft. This is a quick look, and again, random computer picks here by the other teams. Cam Ward goes, Travis Hunter goes, Abdul Carter goes, Armand Mimbo goes, and Will Campbell goes. No major surprises there based on what we're kind of hearing after the combine. So what does that leave here on the table for the Raiders if they stick at 6? Okay, it leaves Mason Graham, tremendous defensive tackle out of Michigan. I would love to add him, but I've got other fish to fry here. Ashton Jonty. Some people don't like drafting running backs this high. That's fine. I get it. If you were going to do it, though, it would be for a guy like Ashton Jonty. Okay? Go check out the tape. Jonty is different on tape from any other running back in this draft. All right? He's got the explosiveness. He's got the big play hits. He's got the average good, per carry consistency. He can catch the football out of the backfield. Jonty really is a legit anywhere in the first round pick. Will Johnson. I'm very tempted by this. Okay. Catching Will Johnson here in the secondary would be tremendous. Okay. I know there's some questions about his deep speed, straight line speed, his coming off the injury from Michigan this past year as well. But you go look at the tape. Past 2 seasons, it's pretty good tape, especially in 2023. But even in 24, I like his zone tape. Okay. Maybe not his one-on-one coverage tape is good, but I like his zone tape. And then Tedero McMillan here, wide receiver for Arizona. I would love to hear from you guys when it comes to this. I think you have 4 very good picks here for the Raiders. Honestly, if I'm the Raiders, I do not feel obligated to try to trade up here for these guys, okay? I feel like no matter who's here, you're going to have some really good people. to try to get here. And I don't, you know, take your pick, man. I can see any of these four. Ultimately, if Tetaroa McMillan is here, that's who I'm going to draft. I love Will Johnson. Okay, the secondary needs a boost. I love Ashton Jaunty. You need running backs. I love Mason Graham. You need to help the defensive line. Okay, there's no question about it. If Tetaroa McMillan is here from Arizona, that's who I'm going to go with. Y'all give me a holler if you feel any differently, but I think all four of those are legit. So let's give the computer a second here to rally up. Moving on to the second round, we're going to have trade offers. I tend to ignore those, honestly, on the mock drafts for a couple of reasons. They're often balanced, but sometimes the computer will keep offering you trades. And interestingly enough, you can end up with 11 draft picks for 2025 plus 23 more for 2026 and then be good draft picks because the computer is trying to simulate the idea that somebody else wants to move up, is motivated to move up. So I tend to ignore the trade offers here on these mock draft simulators, but that's okay. All right, who just went? Jackson Dart just went. Ray Zabel just went. Xavier Watts just went. Benjamin Morrison just went. He would be a good pick here. I'm really, really wanting to go defense here. I'll be honest. If Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, and Mike Green are there, I will eat any one of them up in a heartbeat. I don't think they're going to be there. All the studying I've done, and I've been studying this since the end of the draft last year. I just do not feel like when pick 37 comes for the Raiders that Walter Nolan will be there. I don't feel like Kenneth Grant will be there, and I don't feel like Mike Green will be there. I think they're all gone. So let's explore a little bit and see what else might be there at cornerback. Trey Amos and Azariah Thomas. I like both of those. At safety here, the name I would love to see, and maybe this would be a trade up scenario if you were the Raiders. Yeah, let's see where they've put him. They've got him way up here. It's Nick Emanwari. He might go as high as 18. There's every chance. Nick Emanwari. If you haven't seen him, you probably already have. I liked him even before the combine, and then he exploded at the combine. Okay, his tape is good solid tape for a couple of seasons there from South Carolina. Pete Carroll catching safety Nick Emanwari would be fascinating. Okay, so if Nick Emanwari were to drop, maybe not at 18, but if he were to drop somewhere here in the 20s, possibly, and I say drop, if he's sitting there in the 20s, I don't know how aggressive the Raiders would be or if they would just, go in a different direction, but I would love to see the Raiders go after Nick Emanwari. It would just be tremendous. I really like the idea of that. And then Malachi Starks going at 14. There's some question now about how athletic Malachi Starks is. Will NFL teams stick to what they're seeing on the tape, or will they start to have concerns? Everything I'm seeing for months and months and months has Malachi Starks going somewhere in the top 10 to 20 picks. But if Malachi Starks were to drop, would you actually see the Raiders maybe move on that? It's interesting to me. I'm not inside the Raiders room, so I don't know what they're thinking. If any of you are, I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so anyway, let's get back to reality here. Makuba and Winston, I'm okay with those guys, but probably not in this round. Linebacker here, probably not there. The edger, Mike Green, of course, defensive tackles. Here's my dilemma. Let's switch over to offense real quick, see what's sitting over there. Fannin, Ursery, Hampton. Hampton would be a good pick here for the Raiders as well. Just kind of glancing through. I'm going to assume here on defense that Nolan, Grant, and Green aren't there. Okay, just in all reality, I would grab every one of them. Okay, in a heartbeat if they're sitting here, but I'm going to assume they're not there. Tyler Williams is interesting. I would think about him. Big time run stopper coming out of Ohio State. I think that would work really well here for the Raiders alongside of Max Crosby and Malcolm Kuntz, bringing in Tyler Williams. Just a tremendous, probably the best run stop and defensive tackle in this draft. That interests me very much. Omarion Hampton, running back we mentioned in this draft. You really are looking for a way to catch running backs here. So I'm interested in that. And then let's check out the wide receiver room real quick as well. I like Trey Harris. I do. Big receiver, like him, gets open. Alec Iomanor, one of the more polished receivers in the draft. I like him. There's a chance, though, they might still be sitting there later in the draft. So I'm going to let them go. Let's bring it back to this. Um, just kind of thinking out loud here, reacting real time to some of this. See what all's out here. Maxwell Harrison is a guy I would really be interested in. Dang it, boy. Uh, hmm. Harrison's a guy that if I'm Pete Carroll, I would find hard to pass up on. I didn't know they had him down that deep, and he may go that deep. I'm sorry for the dead space, y'all. I think that's going to be it. Listen, there's a lot of good people here. A lot of good people here. I'm going to assume these guys are gone. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's draft Maxwell Harrison. This is the guy who there's some questions about how good he actually is. Consistently, there's some questions, but he has shown up all through this draft process. The Kentucky tape is inconsistent. I'll say it that way. There are times where it's like very impressive and you really like what you see, and other times it kind of disappears and breaks down even. You're like, man, statistically he's given up a lot, right? You go look at his numbers, but process wise, he looks like an NFL player. The Raiders could really use some defensive help here. Azariah Thomas sitting there. Darian Porter, the speedster. I feel like Maxwell Harrison fits, though. Like the aggressiveness. He seems like he's got some dog in him. I think that fits the Raiders. So I think that's where we're going to go here. Maxwell Harrison. Don't pay much attention to this number 57 rating. This year's draft of all drafts, you can see guys drafted anywhere, the same name drafted anywhere from pick 20 down to pick 60. So don't pay too much attention to that in this year's draft. That's where we're going to go. Maxwell Harrison. Give us a second here on the computer. Get rid of the trade offers. Raiders at pick 68. Let's see what's sitting there. Deion Walker, big upside on Walker. Inconsistent at times. Pad level's a little high. Didn't always get low as you would like for defensive tackle. But boy, the Caleb Johnson, good running back if we're looking to upgrade running backs. A couple of good tight ends sitting here, but we obviously don't need tight end. We got two of them. So, what's sitting here? Running back. Caleb Johnson and DJ Goodens. Ollie Gordon. If we get a chance later, we're going to grab Ollie Gordon for sure. Wide receivers. We already went wide receiver, so I don't think we're necessarily going to do that right now. I'm going to ignore offensive line for tonight again. There's some good offensive linemen in the draft, but I'm going to ignore that. What's here on defense? Deion Walker, I like. The edgers, to me, really starting to thin out at this point. Linebacker. Schlesinger's an interesting guy. Wouldn't mind Schlesinger. CB really starts. That's one thing here. When you get past, for me, the first two rounds of this draft, I think cornerback really dries up. So that's why another reason I wanted to go ahead and grab that. And then safety here. Kevin Winston's going to be hard to pass up, man. Coming out of Penn State. Who else did I say? Deion Walker and the running back, right? I'm going to make a pick here in a second. I let me know in the comments. What would y'all do here, okay? If this was the scenario, right? Let me know. What I'm coming down to again, and again, this is all real time here. Caleb Johnson, the running back, and then I roll over here to defense, and I've got Deion Walker, and then I roll over here to safety, and I've got Kevin Winston. Quick reminder who we already picked: Tedero McMillan and Maxwell Harrison. Listen, I think that secondary needs more juice, all right? And I think Kevin Winston provides it. So that's where I'm going to go. Kevin Winston coming out of Penn State. It's going to be the guy. So what have we not done? Again, you can't do everything, right? Especially when you got this many holes like the Raiders do. What have we done? We have hit wide receiver. We definitely think an upgrade there. We've hit the secondary twice now. Again, providing significant juice. This isn't fifth round hope souls. Big difference here. These are guys who have the athletic ability, who have the tape, who have the production. The only question is, how good will they be? Will they be starter level good, superstar? Will they be, they're going to make the roster. Will they be scraping to catch a spot on the field. Really like our chances. Let's go back here. Let's do one more pick 107. I really feel like, and again, we're all going to see the draft differently. I really feel like once you get outside the top 100 picks in this draft, there's a big drop off. That doesn't mean there's nobody to pick from. It does feel like a big drop off there, but there are some guys here I like. Watch this. Again, you don't need to tight end, but Arroyo coming out of Miami, good tight end. Let's look at running backs. Scatterbo. Ollie Gordon's a guy here again, like his upside. I would really love to see what they could do there. Torrey Horton's a guy, big skinny guy. I think 6'3", 6'4", something like that. Skinny but fast. Ran a really good 40 time. Surprisingly good 40 time at the combine. So I like Torrey Horton here. That's a legit pick. Again, I will ignore offensive line for tonight. Joshua Farmer. I don't think Joshua Farmer is going to be here at this point, to be honest about it. I figure he's gone. But if Joshua Farmer were here at defensive tackle, I would take him. Boy, the CB is really starting to run out. Brian and Riley interest me, but it's just a lot thinner. And then safety has already Malachi Moore, actually. Malachi Moore is a guy I would be tempted to buy. Okay, so sitting here at pick 107, we've already addressed Hairston, Winston, CB and safety, and wide receiver. So I'm not going to go Malachi Moore here because I don't want two rookie safeties sitting back there when I don't need them. Assuming I've obviously gone back and picked up Trevon Merrick here. Let's leave the CBs alone. The linebackers, Demetrius Knight's an interesting guy. So is Jeffrey Bossa. I didn't hit this yet. Boy, Demetrius Knight would be tough to pass up on here. That would be a good pick. Edgers, I'm not thrilled with anybody right there. Joshua Farmer. If Farmer's there, Farmer's the guy. I'm going to assume he's not. Y'all might get tired of hearing me say that. I'm going to assume Farmer's already gone by this point in the draft. It's round 4. Man, I think he's gone somewhere in the 3rd round. And who did we say on offense? Overall offense, I believe I said Torrey Horton was a guy. We've already hit wide receiver. Let's go back to the defense, okay? I think for me at this point, if Farmer's not there, I'm going to assume he isn't. It really would come down to linebacker here for me. Demetrius Knight, Jeffrey Bossa. I've seen Stutzman as well. Stutzman's fine, but Stutzman doesn't really get me going. Demetrius Knight gets me going a little bit here coming out of South Carolina. South Carolina's producing some pretty good talent, by the way. If you haven't noticed, with I forget the name of the coach down there, Beamer, son of Virginia Tech coach Beamer down there, doing a good job bringing through the talent. So Demetrius Knight here or Jeffrey Bossa. Bossa's looked good through the process. To me, Demetrius Knight's tape at South Carolina is better, and he's looked just as good through the process. Jeffrey Bossa has looked good through the process, but it's going to be Demetrius Knight here. So we'll go ahead and make that pick here as well. Again, you can't fix everything, right? You go into a draft with your board, you go into a draft with your wish list, and you're like, man, we want to do this, this, and this. And then the board falls a different way. And you're like, well, okay. This is how we're going to end up the night, and then we'll shut this thing down. Tedero McMillan, feel really good about that. There's other good picks there. You can get them, and that's fine. No need to trade up there if you're the Raiders now. You got your quarterback. There's just no need to trade up here at all, I don't think. We've hit the secondary, and then we've hit linebacker. We didn't hit running back. We didn't hit defensive line, which is weird. It's weird coming off of a draft like this when there are so many good defensive linemen. Don't be surprised if the Raiders grab one at some point. Again, it depends on who's there at your pick and who the Raiders fall in love with. Okay, so that's what we ended up with. It's okay. That's a good solid working here. Thank you all for listening. We've covered, I don't know, a little bit over 30 minutes here. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have a great one. We'll put out some more here, but enjoy the Geno Smith stuff. Enjoy the Pete Carroll stuff. Enjoy the Tom Brady stuff. Enjoy the John Spytek stuff, and then enjoy having some competitive level here. I think the Raiders players are going to start feeling a whole lot better now about what's going on here. Certainly, we already starting to see some of that with Max Crosby as well. All right, have a great one. This is Sports and Money. I am Ben Parker. Check out the other places we're affiliated with. Odds on Favorite, Tricky Takes, Simon Short and Friends over on Apple and Spotify. All kinds of good stuff. Most of it by far NFL related. All right, have a great one. Thank y'all. Bye.